The diner buzzed with a familiar morning rush, forks scraping against chip plates, the sizzle of bacon and eggs on the grill, the chatter of tired workers and truck drivers clutching steaming mugs of coffee. It smelled like grease and burnt toast, with a faint trace of bleach that lingered from last night's cleaning. In the corner booth, a man sat quietly, adjusting the brim of his navy cap. To most, he looked like any other traveler. Worn jeans, a plain shirt, a face that carried calm dignity. But under the surface, this man was no ordinary diner guest. His name was Michael Harrington, one of the most prominent figures in the United States, a man whose influence reached the halls of government, boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies, and philanthropic foundations alike. He was respected, admired, and often feared by those who understood the depth of his power. But none of that mattered here. Hey, inside this rundown diner off a lonely highway, Michael chose to blend in. He came not for fame or recognition, but for a chance to see how ordinary workers, those who kept America moving, were treated when no one of importance was watching. The truth revealed itself quickly. At the counter, a young waitress named Jessica balanced 3 mugs of coffee on a tray. Her apron was stained, her hands trembling from exhaustion. She approached the table cautiously, only to flinch as a sharp voice cut across the room. "Jessica, how many times do I have to tell you? Carry the plates, not the cups first. You're wasting time, and time is money." The voice belonged to a woman with angular features, short blonde hair, and eyes that could cut through steel. She stood tall in her fitted blouse and skirt, arms crossed tightly. Her name was Karen Whitfield. To the staff, she was a manager. To Michael, she looked like the embodiment of cruelty disguised as professionalism. Jessica stammered an apology and rushed off. Michael's jaw clenched as he watched the young woman retreat, cheeks flushed with humiliation. Across the grill, Eddie, the cook, worked furiously, grease popping on his arms, sweat rolling down his forehead. He flipped burgers with one hand while scrambling eggs with the other. The tickets piled up, but his determination never wavered. Still, Karen snapped at him. "Move faster, Eddie. You think customers care about your excuses? Keep up or I'll find someone who can." Rachel, another waitress, leaned down to whisper encouragement to Jessica, who was blinking away tears. But Karen's piercing voice rang out again. "Rachel, less talking, more serving. If I catch you gossiping one more time, you're both out." Michael set his coffee cup down slowly. He had seen enough in his life. Corrupt politicians, greedy executives, and leaders who thrived on intimidation. But what struck him hardest wasn't Karen's cruelty. It was the quiet resignation of the staff. They had learned not to fight back because they believed they had no power. Michael leaned forward, eyes narrowing. This wasn't going to be another moment where he sat silently. Not this time. Hours passed, the tension mounting like steam inside a kettle. Every word from Karen was a lash. Every small mistake became a crime. And then, it happened. Jessica, carrying a tray too heavy for one person, stumbled when a child bumped her side. A glass of soda slipped, crashing to the floor, spreading in a sticky pool. The diner went silent. Karen's heels clicked sharply against the tiles as she marched over, her face twisted in fury. "That's it, Jessica. I've had enough of your incompetence. You're done. Get your things and leave. Right now." Jessica's voice cracked. "Please, Ms. Whitfield, I need this job. My daughter's school tuition, my rent, if you just give me another chance. Spare me the sob story. Out!" Michael rose from his booth, his tall frame casting a shadow over the nearest table. His voice cut across the silence like thunder. "Enough!" Every eye in the diner turned. Karen blinked, momentarily stunned. "And who exactly are you to interrupt me?" she demanded. Michael's expression was calm, but there was fire in his voice. "I'm someone who won't sit by while good people are humiliated for working themselves to the bone. The way you treat your staff is unacceptable. If your boss knew what went on in here, they'd be appalled." Karen's lips curled into a cold smile. "My boss?" "Yes," Michael said firmly. "And believe me, I have no problem reaching out to the top. In fact, I'll personally see to it that they hear about every cruel, unjust thing you've done here. Consider this your warning." The staff exchanged glances. For the first time, hope flickered in their tired eyes. Someone powerful, someone unafraid, was standing up to her. Jessica's hand trembled against her apron, her mouth parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Karen tilted her head, studying Michael. Then, slowly, she began to laugh. It wasn't the laughter of amusement. It was sharp, cutting, mocking. "You really think you're in a position to threaten me?" she asked. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Michael's eyes narrowed. A cruel manager who doesn't deserve the loyalty of his staff. Karen stepped closer, her heels clicking like a drumbeat of dominance. She leaned in, her voice low but laced with venom. "I'm not just a manager, Mr. Harrington. I'm the CEO." Gasps spread through the diner. Jessica's eyes widened. Eddie nearly dropped his spatula. Rachel covered her mouth in disbelief. Michael stiffened, his mind racing. The staff had believed she was just their immediate supervisor. But this wasn't a middle manager gone rogue. This was a woman at the very top. Karen straightened, smoothing her blouse with an air of finality. "So go ahead. Report me. To whom? There is no one above me. This is my company, my rules, my world. And you're nothing but a customer sticking his nose where it doesn't belong." Michael stared at her, unshaken. "You're wrong. I may just be a customer in your eyes, but outside these walls, I'm someone you don't want as an enemy. You may own this company, but you don't own the truth. And I promise you, Karen, one way or another, the truth about you will come out." For the first time, Karen's confident mask flickered. A shadow crossed her face, but she quickly smirked again. "We'll see about that." The diner buzzed again as whispers filled the air. The staff exchanged nervous, hopeful, fearful looks. Jessica glanced at Michael, her lips trembling, as if silently begging him not to give up. Michael sat back down slowly, never breaking eye contact with Karen. He had come in expecting to witness a struggling business. Instead, he uncovered something darker, a tyrant hiding in plain sight, ruling with fear. And now, he had a new mission. But what Michael didn't know was that Karen Whitfield wasn't just a ruthless CEO. She was connected, protected, and behind closed doors, she had allies powerful enough to bury even a man like him. That day inside the diner, one truth rang louder than the clatter of plates or the sting of harsh words. Authority without compassion becomes tyranny. Michael had expected to find a failing business with poor leadership. Instead, he found something worse, power wielded like a weapon, cutting down the very people who kept the place alive. It was a reminder that titles don't make leaders. Empathy does. Respect does. And when those at the top forget the humanity of the people who serve under them, the empire begins to rot from within. Michael had seen injustice in many forms, but here, in a small roadside diner, it hit him differently, because behind every weary smile, every hurried step, every quiet apology, there were lives, families, dreams struggling to survive. Karen thought she was untouchable because she held the title of CEO. But true power isn't about control. It's about responsibility. And sooner or later, every tyrant meets the truth they've been trying to bury. This was only the beginning. The diner felt colder after Karen Whitfield's words. The buzz of voices had died down, replaced by an uneasy silence that wrapped around every corner of the room. Even the clatter of dishes from Eddie's station had stopped. It was as if time itself had frozen to let her words sink in. "I'm the CEO," she had said, her voice dripping with pride and venom. And the air had changed. Michael Harrington sat back down slowly, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. Karen smirked as if she had won something, as if revealing her title had put him in his place. But Michael wasn't just any man. Jessica bent down to clean the broken glass at her feet, her hands trembling. Rachel quickly joined her, whispering urgently, "Don't, Jess, just leave it." But Jessica shook her head. "If I don't clean it, she'll fire me even faster." Karen's heels clicked as she returned to the counter, her sharp voice slicing through the quiet. "Everyone back to work. The show's over. We don't pay for drama around here." Eddie muttered under his breath, but Michael caught it. "She doesn't pay for anything except misery." Michael leaned forward, speaking low but firm. "Eddie." The cook looked up, startled. No customer ever addressed him directly, certainly not with that kind of authority. "You don't deserve this," Michael said quietly. Then he turned toward Jessica and Rachel. None of you do. Karen's head snapped toward him. I said sit down and stay out of it. Michael stood again, his presence filling the room. Oh, what? You'll have me thrown out? That would only add to the list of things I'll be reporting about you. Karen's lips curled into a mocking smile. Report to who, Mr. Harrington? Do you think there's someone above me? I am the boss. This company exists because of me. And let me make something very clear. You may carry weight out there in whatever world you come from. But in here, you're nothing. The employees flinched at her words. For them, it wasn't just a statement. It was a reminder of the reality they lived every day. A boss who held their rent, their children's meals, their survival in her hands. Michael's jaw clenched. You're wrong. Even in your own house, the truth is bigger than you. And one day, the truth will break through these walls you built around yourself. Karen laughed again, shaking her head. You speak like some kind of prophet. But prophets don't pay the bills. Authority does. Power does. And I hold both. The moment broke when the front door opened, the bell chiming softly. A couple walked in, laughing, oblivious to the storm inside. Karen's smile flipped instantly into a fake warmth. Welcome in. Table for two. She ushered them to a booth, her tone dripping with sweetness. Michael watched closely. He had seen this before, leaders who switched faces depending on who was watching. It was a performance, and Karen was a skilled actress. But he had also seen what came after the performance, the rot behind the curtain. When the new customers were seated, Karen leaned close to Michael as she passed his table. Her words were a hiss. Enjoy your meal while you can, Mr. Harrington. Because once you leave, this place will keep running exactly the way I want it to. And you will be forgotten. Michael said nothing. He didn't need to, not yet, but Jessica's tearful eyes caught his. Rachel gave the faintest nod, as if urging him to keep going. Eddie slammed another burger onto the grill with unusual force, muttering again. Michael finished his coffee in silence, placed a few bills on the table, and stood. His voice carried just enough for the employees to hear. This isn't over. He walked out. The bell over the door jingled behind him, and the employees were left standing in that diner, their hope fragile but alive. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his hotel room, staring at the city lights. His mind replayed Karen's words. I'm the CEO. My company. My rules. He had faced power before. He had seen CEOs cover up scandals, politicians silence whistleblowers, and leaders twist the law to fit their needs. But there was something different about Karen Whitfield. Something brazen. She wasn't even trying to hide. She believed she was untouchable. And maybe she was. Michael picked up his phone, scrolling through contacts. He could make one call and have reporters at that diner in an hour. He could leak the truth and watch the world burn around Karen. But that wasn't how he wanted this to play out. He wanted to see deeper, to understand the full extent of what she had built. Because one diner couldn't be the whole story. No CEO spent their days micromanaging servers unless they had something bigger to protect. The next day, Michael returned. Jessica greeted him with a tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Back again, she asked softly. Back again, Michael said, sliding into his booth. Karen noticed him immediately. Her smile faltered, replaced by narrowed eyes. Persistent, aren't you? Michael raised his cup. Persistent enough. All day, he watched. He listened. He saw the way tips were quietly taken from waitresses and funneled into company fees. He noticed how Eddie never once sat down, even on his break. He overheard Rachel whispering to Jessica about how their paychecks were consistently short, but any complaints were met with threats of termination. By evening, he had heard enough. As Karen counted the register at the counter, Michael stood once more. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made every head turn. I've given this a lot of thought, Ms. Whitfield, and I've decided something. I will not stay silent. You're running your company on fear and cruelty, and sooner or later, it's going to collapse under you. Karen froze, then slowly looked up. Her eyes glinted with a dangerous sharpness. Is that so? Yes, Michael said firmly. And if you think I won't report this to someone above you, if you think your title shields you from accountability, you're mistaken. For the first time, Karen didn't laugh. She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, without breaking eye contact, she leaned closer across the counter. Her voice was low, but every employee nearby could hear it. "You really don't understand, do you? There's no one above me. You're playing a game you can't win, Harrington. And if you keep pushing, you'll find out just how far my reach goes." The room fell silent again. Jessica's hands trembled around the coffee pot. Rachel's lips parted as if to speak, but she didn't dare. Eddie muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. Michael stood taller, unflinching. "Then I'll just have to find out how deep this rut goes." Karen's smile returned, slow and sinister. "Be careful, Michael. Some truths are dangerous." The diner buzzed again, but nothing felt the same. Something had shifted. The lines had been drawn. And for the first time, Michael realized this wasn't just about a diner. This was about something bigger, something that reached far beyond these walls. Because Karen Whitfield wasn't just cruel. She was connected, and whatever she was hiding, she wasn't going to give it up easily. That night, as Michael walked back into the cold air, his phone buzzed with a new message. No name, just a number he didn't recognize. "You don't know what you're getting into. Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Michael's eyes narrowed. He slipped the phone into his pocket. He wasn't stopping now. Note this. Power without accountability is the most dangerous kind of power. Titles and positions can give someone authority, but when authority becomes a shield for cruelty, it poisons everything it touches. Courage doesn't always look like victory. It often begins as a single person refusing to stay silent. True leadership isn't about being untouchable. It's about being responsible. And when responsibility is abandoned, resistance becomes a duty. Michael Harrington stood under the flickering streetlight, the anonymous text still glowing on his phone screen. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." His instinct sharpened. This wasn't idle talk. He'd been in politics long enough to recognize a warning when he saw one. Karen Whitfield wasn't just running a diner with cruel policies. She was protecting something larger, something dangerous enough to silence dissent before it spread. Michael slipped the phone into his pocket, his breath forming mist in the cold night air. He could have walked away. He could have ignored it all. But then Jessica's pleading eyes came back to him. Eddie's weary silence. Rachel's trembling hands. Their survival hung on Karen's whims, and no one had ever dared stand up for them. The next morning, Michael returned to the diner. The bell above the door jingled softly, but the atmosphere inside was heavier than usual. Jessica's smile was faint, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Eddie's movements were stiff, almost robotic, as if every flip of the spatula cost him strength. Rachel moved quickly between tables, but her shoulders slumped lower than before. Karen stood at the counter, clipboard in hand, her lips pressed into a thin line. She saw Michael and smirked. "Back again, Mr. Harrington? You must really like our food." Michael slid into his usual booth, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm here for the truth, Ms. Whitfield. And something tells me it's not on the menu." Karen's smirk tightened. "Careful. Curiosity is an expensive habit." Michael ignored her jab. He watched as Jessica brought his coffee, her hand shaking slightly as she placed it on the table. He lowered his voice. "Jessica, may I ask you something?" She hesitated, glancing nervously toward Karen, then nodded. "Your paychecks," Michael said softly. "They're short, aren't they?" Jessica froze. Her lips trembled, but she whispered, "Always." She calls it deductions. For mistakes, for broken plates, for whatever she wants. Michael leaned forward. "And you can't report it." Jessica shook her head quickly. "We tried. A boy who worked here once. He called the labor board. 2 weeks later, he was gone. No one's seen him since." Michael's chest tightened. This wasn't just workplace abuse. This was intimidation, control. Eddie slid a plate onto the counter, his voice low and bitter. "You think she's just a bad boss? Look closer. Half the money in this place never touches the books." Michael's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" But before Eddie could answer, Karen's voice rang out like a whip. "Eddie, less talking, more cooking. Unless you'd like today to be your last shift." Eddie stiffened, his knuckles white around the spatula. He said nothing more. Michael sipped his coffee slowly, but his mind was racing. Missing wages, fear-driven silence, unrecorded money. It was starting to look less like a poorly-run diner and more like a front for something darker. That evening, after leaving the diner, Michael began making calls. Discreet ones, friends in finance, a contact in the state attorney's office, a trusted journalist, all off the record, for now, and what he discovered only deepened the mystery. The diner wasn't just failing. It was suspiciously profitable on paper. Too profitable for a small-town operation with peeling paint and broken neon. The numbers didn't add up. Someone was funneling money through the books, and Karen Whitfield was at the center of it. 2 nights later, Michael returned again. The tension in the diner was unbearable. Jessica's eyes darted constantly toward Karen. Rachel moved in silence, her usual warm chatter gone. Eddie looked pale, sweat shining on his brow. Karen noticed, of course. She noticed everything. She walked over to Michael's booth, leaning down so only he could hear. "You should be careful where you step, Mr. Harrington. Roads with too many secrets have a way of swallowing travelers whole." Michael looked up at her calmly. "And yet here you are, trying to scare me instead of proving me wrong." For the first time, Karen's smile faltered. Just for a second, but it was enough. Michael stood, his voice rising so the entire diner could hear. "These people deserve better than fear. They deserve better than lies. And I intend to find out exactly what you're hiding, Ms. Whitfield." The diner went silent again. Jessica's breath caught. Rachel froze mid-step. Eddie looked up from the grill, his eyes wide. Karen's jaw tightened. "Then consider this your last meal here, Harrington, because if you keep pushing, you'll wish you'd never walked through that door." Her voice was calm, but there was venom underneath it, venom that carried real danger. Michael sat back down slowly, unshaken. He had faced world leaders, billionaires, and corporate titans who had tried to intimidate him. But something about Karen's confidence told him this fight was unlike any other. And then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Leave town. Now. This is your only warning." Michael's hand tightened around the phone. He lifted his gaze to Karen. She was watching him from across the room, her smirk returning. This wasn't just about a diner anymore. This was a game of power, secrets, and fear. And Michael had just stepped into the heart of it. Note this. Fear is the weapon of the corrupt. It silences voices, bends backs, and chains good people to injustice. But fear only thrives when it is obeyed. The moment someone refuses to be silent, the walls of intimidation begin to crack. Truth is dangerous to those who build their power on lies. And sometimes, the most powerful act of defiance is simply to keep asking questions. The glow of Michael Harrington's phone screen lit his face in the dark diner booth. "Leave town. Now. This is your only warning." His chest tightened, but his resolve only grew harder. Whoever was sending these messages wasn't bluffing. Michael slipped the phone into his jacket and lifted his eyes. Across the room, Karen Whitfield was watching him. That smirk again, cool, confident, almost daring him to make his next move. He didn't flinch. The next morning, Michael walked into the diner once more. Jessica served him in silence, her hands trembling. Her eyes darted toward Karen before she set down his coffee. Michael lowered his voice. "Jessica, what's wrong?" She hesitated, then whispered, "They're raising my rent. I don't have enough. If I lose this job, I lose my home. My little girl has nowhere to go." Michael's jaw tightened. The cruelty wasn't just inside the diner. It seeped into their lives. Eddie staggered by, dropping a plate onto the counter with trembling hands. Sweat poured from his forehead. Michael called after him quietly, "Eddie, you don't look well." Eddie shook his head. "Doesn't matter. If I miss a shift, I don't eat. She'll replace me in a day." And Rachel, her smile was gone completely, her voice barely above a whisper as she passed Michael. "She knows. Karen knows you're digging. You should be careful. She has friends in places that make people disappear." Michael's stomach toned, but his expression stayed calm. "I faced bigger threats than Karen Whitfield," he said. But deep inside, he knew this wasn't just a local tyrant running a diner. This was organized, structured, and dangerous. Later that night, Michael walked through the parking lot toward his rental car. The cool air was sharp in his lungs. But then he noticed something. Footsteps. Steady. Following. He turned quickly. A black SUV idled at the corner of the lot, its headlights off, the driver's face hidden in the shadows. Michael stood still, his instincts screaming. The SUV didn't move. It simply watched. Finally, Michael got into his car and pulled away. The SUV followed, block after block, street after street, always 2 car lengths behind. Michael tested them, taking sudden turns, slowing at green lights, circling back through empty streets. The SUV never left. Finally, Michael pulled into a crowded gas station. The SUV rolled past and vanished into the night. Michael exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. He knew surveillance when he saw it. This wasn't random intimidation. It was coordinated. Someone had sent them, and he didn't need to guess who. The next day, Michael arrived at the diner early. The neon sign flickered as usual, but inside, the tension was worse than ever. Karen's presence was suffocating. She barked orders at Rachel, scolded Jessica, and criticized Eddie until the man's hand shook so badly he dropped the pan. The customers barely noticed. They were used to the tension here. But Michael noticed everything. As Karen moved past his table, he spoke calmly. "You're being watched, Karen." She froze, turning her head slowly. "What did you just say?" "You have people following me," Michael said plainly. "And if you think that will scare me off, you've underestimated me." Karen's smirk returned, but her eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of unease. "Mr. Harrington, in my world, people who ask too many questions stop asking altogether." Michael leaned forward, his voice firm but quiet. "Then maybe it's time your world changes." The employees froze at the exchange. Jessica's eyes widened. Eddie nearly dropped his spatula again, and Rachel bit her lip so hard it bled. Karen leaned down, her voice a venomous whisper. "Be very careful, Michael. You think you're hunting me, but I'm the one holding the leash." Michael locked eyes with her, unshaken. Not for long. That night, Michael returned to his hotel. Exhaustion pressed against him, but so did something else. Curiosity. He couldn't stop now. He opened his laptop and dug into public records. Karen's name appeared again and again, attached to companies beyond the diner. Shell corporations, real estate investments, offshore accounts, money moving in circles, never landing anywhere clean. This wasn't just a bad CEO running a cool diner. This was corruption that stretched far and wide. And then, as Michael traced the lines further, something clicked. One of the shell companies had ties to a larger corporation he knew well, one with government contracts and political influence. Michael leaned back, his heart pounding. This was bigger than he thought. Much bigger. A sudden knock rattled his hotel door. Michael froze. Another knock, harder this time. "Mr. Harrington." A voice called from the other side. "Calm. Mail. We need to talk." Michael stayed silent, his pulse racing. He glanced at the window, then at the door again. Whoever was outside wasn't there for small talk. The knock came again, louder, and then the voice said something that made Michael's blood run cold. "Karen sent her regards." Note this. Injustice doesn't thrive alone. It survived by building networks of fear, silence, and power. The deeper you dig, the more you realize cruelty is rarely an isolated act. But every corrupt system has one weakness, the truth. It cannot be buried forever. Those who stand against corruption may be threatened, watched, or followed, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is a refusal to be controlled by it. The pounding at the hotel door didn't stop. "Mr. Harrington," the voice said again, sharper this time. "Open up. We're not here to hurt you. We just need to talk." Michael's eyes flicked to the bedside clock. It's nearly midnight. He stood silently, weighing his options. Finally, he straightened his jacket, walked calmly to the door, and unlocked it. 2 men stepped inside. Not street enforcers, not drifters in leather jackets, but professionals. Black suits, clean-shaven. One carried a slim briefcase. The other closed the door behind them with practiced ease. "Who are you?" Michael asked, his tone steady. The taller man set the briefcase on the desk. "Associates of Ms. Whitfield," he said smoothly. "You've been making her life difficult. She'd like that to stop." Michael tilted his head. "So she sends lawyers in the middle of the night." The shorter man's lips curled faintly. "We're not lawyers. Think of us as mediators. Our job is to keep situations from escalating." Michael folded his arms. "Your boss has already escalated this. She's exploiting employees, laundering money, hiding something far bigger than she wants anyone to see. And you expect me to walk away?" The taller man leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "You're a respected man, Mr. Harrington. Powerful, influential. But even men like you disappear when they cross the wrong people." Michael didn't blink. "I survived bigger threats than Karen Whitfield. If she thinks I'll back down, she doesn't know me." The room went still. Then the man with a briefcase clicked it open and slid a file across the desk. "Before you decide, you should see what you're up against." Michael hesitated, then opened the file. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance shots of Jessica walking her daughter to school. Eddie is waiting at a bus stop, coughing into his sleeve. Rachel leaves her small apartment late at night, glancing over her shoulder. Michael's chest burned with anger. "You're threatening them." The shorter man's voice was low, almost cold. "Not threatening, reminding you that collateral damage exists. Sometimes innocent people get hurt when wars are fought. You can prevent that by walking away now." Michael's fist clenched, but his voice stayed calm. "If Karen thinks this will silence me, she's wrong. You've only confirmed what I already suspected. She's not just running a diner. She's running something bigger. Something dirty." The taller man's smile faltered for the first time. "Careful, Mr. Harrington. You're not just poking at a CEO. You're poking at an entire system that protects her. You expose her, you expose others. Very important people. People who don't forgive." Michael closed the file slowly, locking eyes with him. "Good. Then I know I'm in the right place." The room thickened with silence. The men exchanged a glance, then rose. "Think about what we've said," the shorter one murmured, straightening his tie. "This is your last chance to leave quietly, because the next time we meet, it won't be a conversation." They left as calmly as they had arrived, shutting the door softly behind them. Michael stood in the quiet room, staring at the file. Jessica, Eddie, Rachel, their lives were now pawns in Karen's game. He felt the weight of their safety pressing on his shoulders. But behind that weight, a stronger resolve grew. He sat down at his laptop again, pulling up the web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and government ties he'd begun mapping. His finger traced the lines from Karen's diner empire up to a corporate conglomerate tied directly to a defense contractor. Billions in government funding, lobbyists, political names. Michael froze when one name appeared, someone he'd shaken hands with, someone he knew personally. The puzzle pieces locked together, and the picture that emerged was staggering. Karen wasn't just protecting her own wealth. She was guarding secrets that could topple powerful men and women in Washington. Michael leaned back, whispering to himself, "Now I understand why they're afraid." Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. A new text. No number. No name. "They are coming for you tomorrow. Choose your allies wisely." Michael's pulse raced. Who sent it? Another threat, or a hidden ally inside Karen's circle? He set the phone down, staring at the door as if expecting another knock. Tomorrow everything will change. Note this. Powerful people often believe fear is stronger than truth. They use intimidation, silence, and control to bend others into submission. But courage means standing firm even when the cost is high. For every threat, for every shadow in the hallway, there's a deeper truth waiting to be exposed. And once the truth is revealed, no amount of power can contain it. The morning sun cut through the blinds of Michael Harrington's hotel room, but the warmth did little to calm the storm inside. He hadn't slept. The warning text replayed in his mind like a drumbeat. They are coming for you tomorrow. And now, tomorrow has arrived. Michael moved deliberately, adjusting his tie in the mirror. His reflection was calm, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the storm within. He was no stranger to threats, but this one was different. Karen wasn't just protecting herself. She was a gatekeeper for something far bigger. A knock broke the silence. Not frantic, not polite, a deliberate, steady rhythm. Michael opened the door. 3 men stood in the hallway. The same tailored suits as the ones from the night before, but different faces. Their eyes carried no emotion, just a cold efficiency of men sent to deliver a message. Mr. Harrington, the tallest one, said smoothly, "We'll need you to come with us." Michael didn't move. "And if I say no?" The man smiled faintly. "Then we'll have to persevere." Michael stepped back, his mind already working through the possibilities. He let them enter, closing the door behind them. The shortest of the men spoke next. His voice clipped. "Karen Whitfield has extended every courtesy, Mr. Harrington. She's given warnings, gentle nudges. Now, she's done asking nicely." Michael folded his arms. "So what's this? Then? Kidnapping? A lesson?" The man's lips curved. "Perspective. She believes you've misunderstood the scale of what you're meddling in. Our job is to help you see it clearly." One of them placed a black folder on the table, sliding it toward him. Michael opened it. Inside were documents, contracts, and sealed government letters. And there it was again, those same names. Senators, lobbyists, executives with defense contracts worth billions. Michael's pulse slowed, but his mind sharpened. They weren't just threatening anymore. They were warning him to stop digging. "You think you're holding leverage," Michael said, his voice calm but cutting. "But here's what you've missed. I already know enough to bury her, to bury all of you. And if something happens to me, those files won't stay hidden." For the first time, the tall man's expression cracked, just slightly, a flicker of unease. The shortest man leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We know you're a powerful man, Harrington. You've built an empire of your own. But understand this, Karen isn't working alone. She's a piece of something far larger. Expose her, and you make enemies you'll never see coming. People who will ruin you without lifting a finger." Michael didn't blink. Then maybe it's time someone stood up to them. The silence that followed was suffocating. The men exchanged a glance, then rose in unison. "You've been warned," the tall one said quietly. "The next move will be haze." They left as calmly as they arrived. The door shut. Michael exhaled, sinking into the chair. He stared at the folder on the table. Every page was a confirmation. Karen's empire wasn't just greed. It was corruption wrapped in power, and power wrapped in government contracts. But one detail caught his eye. A signature at the bottom of a contract. A name he recognized instantly. It wasn't just a business leader. It wasn't just a politician. It was someone Michael had trusted for years. Someone close enough to be called an ally. His blood went cold. As Michael sat frozen, his phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. "You can't trust him. He's already chosen a side." Michael's hand tightened around the phone. Betrayal was closer than he thought, and the war was only beginning. Note this. When you stand against corruption, the greatest danger is not always the enemies you can see. It's the betrayals that come from the shadows. Power hides behind familiar faces, behind friends who smile while they sell you out. Courage means preparing not only to face your foes, but to question who you can truly trust when the stakes rise higher than ever. Michael Harrington sat frozen in the silence of his hotel room, his eyes locked on the signature at the bottom of the contract. One name, David Whitmore. The pen strokes were clean, deliberate, unmistakable. Michael's breath caught in his throat. David wasn't just another politician. He was a politician, a senior senator, a man who'd once been considered Michael's ally in Washington. They'd shared stages, shaken hands before cameras, and laughed together in private meetings. David was the one Michael had trusted to push for reforms in corporate transparency. Now his name sat on a contract that tied him directly to Karen Whitfield's empire. Michael felt the weight of years pressing down on him. He remembered the dinners, the speeches, the whispered promises of a better America. He remembered believing David was different, that he wasn't like the rest. But here it was, his signature in black ink. The betrayal wasn't distant. It wasn't abstract. It was personal. Michael's phone buzzed again. The anonymous number. He's been with her from the beginning. He feeds her protection. Without him, she falls. Michael's phone buzzed again. The anonymous number. He's been with her from the beginning. He feeds her protection. Without him, she falls. Michael set the phone down, his hand shaking slightly. The thought was unbearable. Karen Whitfield, the woman who terrorized her employees and ran her diner like a prison, was propped up by none other than Senator David Whitmore, the man Michael had once called a friend. He thought back to a night years ago, a private fundraiser in D.C., chandeliers glowing above polished oak tables. David had leaned across the table, his voice low. Michael, men like us, we have to stand for something bigger. We have influence, power, use it for good, and we can change the system from within. Michael had believed him. He'd written checks, backed policies, and lent his credibility to David's campaigns. And now it was all a lie. The knock at the door broke his trance. Michael turned. His heart pounded. Slowly, he opened the door. And there he was, David Whitmore. The senator stood in the hallway, flanked by no security detail, no cameras. Just him, his silver hair neatly combed, his tailored suit immaculate, his smile as polished as ever. "Michael," David said warmly, as though nothing had changed. "May I come in?" Michael stepped aside silently. David entered, glancing once around the room before settling into the chair by the desk. "You've seen the papers," David said smoothly, folding his hands. "So you know." Michael's voice was low, dangerous. "Tell me it's not true." David sighed, almost theatrically. "It's complicated." "Complicated." Michael snapped. "You're in bed with Karen Whitfield. You're propping up her empire of exploitation. Do you know what she's done to those employees? To the lives she's crushed?" David leaned back, unbothered. "Michael, you're seeing this too narrowly. Karen isn't just running a diner. She's part of a network that funds real projects, defense, technology, infrastructure. Yes, the diner is ugly business, but it's a cog in a much bigger machine. A machine that keeps the country running." Michael's jaw tightened, at the expense of people's lives. David's eyes flashed, the warmth slipping away. "Don't be naive. Every empire is built on sacrifice. You, of all people, should understand that." Michael stared at him, disgust written across his face. "You stood beside me. You talked about reform, about transparency. You told me we could fix the system from within. And this is what you meant." David's smile returned, colder this time. Fixing the system means controlling it, and Karen is in control. Without her, everything unravels. You can expose her if you like, Michael, but do you know what happens then? Billions in contracts collapse. Thousands of jobs vanish. And those people you think you're protecting, they'll be collateral damage. Michael shook his head slowly. "No, this isn't reform. It's rotten, and I won't be a part of it." David's voice sharpened. "Then you make yourself an enemy, Michael. Not just of Karen, not just of me, but of everyone who benefits from this machine. And you know as well as I do, that's everyone at the top." Silence pressed between them. Finally, Michael leaned forward, his voice steady as stone. "Then so be it." For the first time, David's smile faltered. He rose smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "I always admired your stubbornness. But don't mistake stubbornness for strength. You'll be crushed if you continue down this path. And when that happens, no one will remember Michael Harrington the reformer. They'll remember the man who burned his own empire to the ground." He walked toward the door, pausing only once. "You have one last chance to walk away, Michael. Take it, for your sake." The door clicked shut behind him. Michael stood in the silence, his chest heaving. The betrayal cut deeper than any threat Karen had ever made. David Whitmore, the man he had trusted most, was a very shield protecting her empire of cruelty. He turned back to the folder on the desk, staring at names, the contracts, the signatures. If he exposed Karen, he wouldn't just take down a corrupt CEO. He'd be declaring war on a sitting senator and everyone tied to him. The stakes weren't just high, they were historic. And somewhere deep inside, Michael knew, once he crossed that line, there was no going back. His phone buzzed again. The anonymous number. "He won't stop you. He'll destroy you, unless you move first." Michael gripped the phone, his eyes narrowing. Whoever this unknown ally was, they were right. He couldn't wait. He couldn't hesitate. If David Whitmore thought Michael Harrington would break, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Note: betrayal by a stranger wounds the surface. Betrayal by a friend cuts to the soul. It is the cruelest reminder that loyalty can be bought, that even shared dreams can be corrupted by greed. Yet betrayal also sharpens the truth. Integrity means standing firm even when those closest to you fall. In the end, loyalty to justice must be stronger than loyalty to men. The night stretched long, but Michael Harrington did not sleep. He sat in the glow of his laptop, papers scattered around him, the weight of betrayal pressing against his chest. David Whitmore's face, his calm voice, his cold words, they haunted him. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, the fear gave way to something stronger. Resolve. He rose, buttoned his jacket, and stared into the mirror. The man staring back wasn't the cautious reformer he'd once been. He was a man at war, with corruption, with betrayal, with an empire of lies. The time for silence was over. At first light, Michael walked into the diner. The neon sign buzzed, the smell of coffee and grease clung to the air, but everything felt sharper, like the world itself knew the storm was about to break. Jessica looked up from the counter, her face pale. Eddie shuffled past, his hands shaking more than ever. Rachel avoided his eyes completely. Michael pulled him aside, his voice low but firm. It's time. No more whispers. No more fear. Karen and David built their empire on your silence. If we speak together, if we stand together, they can't bury the truth. Jessica's lip trembled. But if we go against her... Michael leaned in. Then we end it. For good. Eddie swallowed hard, his tired eyes meeting Michael's. For the first time in weeks, there was a spark of hope. Rachel finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We're with you. The choice was made. Hours later, Michael sat in front of cameras. A press conference hastily arranged, but filled with reporters hungry for a story. Lights blazed, microphones lined the podium, questions buzzed in the air. When Michael Harrington stepped up, the room went still. He looked into the cameras, his voice steady. My name is Michael Harrington. For months, I've been investigating corruption in plain sight. It begins with Karen Whitfield, a CEO who runs a business not with leadership, but with cruelty. She has exploited her workers, threatened their families, and built an empire of fear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But Karen Whitfield is not alone, Michael continued. His hand slammed onto the stack of documents. Her protection comes from the highest levels of power, from men like Senator David Whitmore. The room exploded with noise, shouted questions, cameras flashing. Michael raised his hand, silencing them. Here are the contracts. Here are the signatures. Here is the proof that Karen Whitfield's empire is tied directly to government funding, shell companies, and billions in stolen influence. This is not reform. This is rut. And it ends now. Within minutes, the story hit every major network. Screens across America lit up with Michael's words. Karen's name. David's name. The documents he dropped on live television. Back at the diner, Karen Whitfield watched the broadcast, her smug expression finally cracking. The coffee cup in her hand shattered against the wall. David Whitmore, miles away in his marble office, stood frozen as reporters flooded the Capitol steps, demanding answers. For the first time, they were no longer in control. But Michael's fight wasn't just with them. It was for the people they'd crushed. Jessica's daughter would keep her home. Eddie would get treatment instead of punishment. Rachel would never again work under the shadow of fear. The empire Karen and David built began to crumble, not overnight, but piece by piece, as the truth rippled outward. That evening, Michael walked out of the press conference into the cool night air. Cameras still flashed, voices still shouted, but for a moment he stood apart, breathing deeply. He had risked everything, his reputation, his safety, his future. But for the first time in weeks, he felt free. The battle wasn't over. Karen and David still had allies, still had resources, still had ways to strike back. But their invincibility was gone. And Michael Harrington, the man they thought could be silenced, had become their greatest threat. He looked into the night sky, his voice a whisper only he could hear. This is just the beginning. The true measure of leadership is not how much power you hold, but how willing you are to use it for those without a voice. Injustice hides in silence, in fear, in systems designed to protect the cruel. But courage, real courage, means risking everything to speak truth when the cost is highest. Michael Harrington's stand reminds us that no empire of lies lasts forever. In the end, it is always truth that survives.